Did you notice how bad the music was this time in the intro? Well, that's because I made it myself. Yes, that's right, it's yet another skill I'm trying to add to my video production repertoire. And I'm using you guys as my guinea pigs. I mean, you get to be the world first early access consumers of my new music. You are welcome, by the way. But we're here to talk about the Princeton, aka the Niagara class. Now, there are really only two reasons to buy any ship: Space Barbie and DPS. In other words, you're either buying it because you like how it looks, or because it will help you perform better. And unless you hit your head really badly, fell into a 3-year coma, woke up with a massive headache, heard your loved ones through the door, whispering to the doctor, thinking you can't hear them, but actually you can, where they keep saying, "What's wrong with him? What's wrong with him? Why can't he just get better?" And the doctor says, there, I know, but these things take time. Then you probably aren't picking up the Niagara class for the looks. And the sad reality when it comes to DPS is that the community has polarized things to the point that everything is either meta or it's garbage, with nothing in between. You can only have 7 starship traits. You can only have 1 experimental weapon. You can only have 14 consoles at most, and that's with a full Miracle Worker ship and 2 experimental upgrades. So unless a new starship comes with a top 7 trait for your playstyle or a top 14 console for your build, then it's probably not worth picking up specifically for performance. And if you don't like the way it looks, then you don't really have a reason to pick it up either. But just because a ship isn't worth buying doesn't mean it's bad. Let's consider the possibilities of this very reasonable and understandable mindset. Cryptic either has to release ships they know people are going to want for the aesthetics, aka things that appeared on screen, preferably hero ships or things that had a prominent role, but they've kind of already milked that cow as far as it can go. Once you have the 10th anniversary bundle, there are significantly diminishing returns at that point, and they've already released multiple versions of all the hero ships. The only alternative then is to add power creep to the game with every new ship. But is that something we really want? If they choose not to go either of those routes and just release a very solid ship, then you end up with something like the Niagara. Now, the console ended up being significantly better than I thought, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but even if it hadn't, the ship itself is actually pretty good. It's just not good enough to be one of the top platforms for any specific build type. I've seen a lot of animosity towards the Princeton on Reddit and on YouTube, where a lot of people are recommending every ship in the bundle except the Princeton, and people online are complaining that it was a dud, and part of the reason they may not buy the bundle, and one of their biggest disappointments. Is this really fair, though? I don't think so. If you want to do torpedoes, then you can get Concentrate Firepower 3, Torpedo High Yield 3, and Mixed Armament Synergy 3 on the build, along with 7 locator consoles. This combination will put out far more damage than you will ever need to complete any content in the game, even on elite difficulty. Don't like torpedoes? That's okay, it can do energy weapons too. With a full Miracle Worker seat, you can get Narrow Sensor Bands 3, Mixed Armament Synergy 3 if you want to go that route, and 8 ISO mags, which are the strongest consoles in the game for energy weapons and the most you can get on any ship, which again will do as much damage as you could possibly need for anything in the game. When people argue over performance, it's like saying a car that only does 200 miles an hour is disappointing compared to a car that can do 500 miles an hour, while forgetting that the speed limit is still 55 miles an hour. Having said that, the surprise console is maybe the only thing I can recommend you to buy the ship for, so let's just go ahead and start talking about the accessories. First, the trait, risk versus reward. When your ship is below 90% hull, then healing deals radiation damage to a single target equal to the healing you receive. It sounds bad, and it is bad. Next, the console Fractal Integrity Bleed gives you 5% hull capacity and 20% increased healing received, which is an amount that increases as your hull decreases. But the clicky is a point-blank AoE radiation damage that also damages yourself for half that amount, or 8% of your hull. It toggles on for up to 30 seconds unless you choose to toggle it off or your hull drops below 33%, which it may because taking 8% of your hull every second is a lot of damage to deal with. I threw this on a support tank build with the Voth Rampart flight deck carrier and jumped into a public queue ISE where it ended up doing a surprising 33,000 DPS, which was a quarter of my total damage and quite respectable considering the diminished amount of damage you can expect from this type of build. Is it going to perform this well at the highest levels of play? Well, probably not, but I do have something to say about that. If you're one of the handful of people playing at the very highest echelons of DPS chasing, then you don't need my opinion, nor were you waiting on me to give it. But what is far more likely is that a great number of you watching this video may be interested in random elite TFOs, where a more traditional support tank build that focuses on the tanking could be quite useful, and where combat may be extended out for many minutes, and you could use this console many times. In a scenario like that, I think it can be quite powerful and quite useful. The fact that it's an AoE attack also helps you to build threat. So if you were looking for an excuse to buy the Princeton to strip something off of it for parts, I think the console is definitely the winner here. Or if you're thinking about purchasing the 14th bundle anyway, and you're feeling bad that the Princeton is a dud that ended up being included, you can feel a little bit better knowing that actually it's not that bad, that if you wanted to fly it, it would be quite good, and the console off of it at the very least can be put on some of your builds and help you out quite a bit. I don't like the way it looks, especially the version that showed up in TNG, but the new modern model they put on it, which you saw in the cinematic at the beginning, doesn't look too bad. They did a pretty good job of hiding that third nacelle down there, so I didn't really think it was all that ugly when I was flying with it. Maybe it won't be as big of a deal breaker for you either. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. If a ship isn't worth looking at and it doesn't have anything you can strip for parts, is it worth purchasing? Should we always sort new ships into meta or bad, or should we acknowledge that there's something in between? Cryptic isn't going to stop releasing ships because that's the main way they make money, and they need that money in order to keep the very buggy and barely working servers online. So unless we want to accept more power creep, or have them stop releasing the only thing that brings them revenue, or see an endless stream of repeats of the hero ships like the 15th Defiant or the 43rd Voyager, then maybe we need to get a little bit more comfortable with ships that are just good. Though I won't go so far as to say not all ships can be special.